Hello ladies and gentlemen, it's Young here and welcome to Metal Gear Solid 5's 2013 Roundup, my gift to you to kick off the new year. 2013 was a big year for Metal Gear Solid. At the same time, for Metal Gear fans, 2013 proved to be a confusing year after Hideo Kojima blurred the lines between truths and lies with a marketing stunt that he pulled with the Phantom Pain, brewing endless debates and conspiracy theories about the future of the franchise as a result. To ease confusion, I have taken it upon myself to chronologically gather all the important information in 2013 in one video. There's a lot to cover, so without further ado, let's dive right into it. It all began days before 2013 at the VGAs when the world feasted its eyes on what was then known as the Phantom Pain. It didn't take long for fans to see through Kojima's deceptions and the many hints and clues that pointed to the Phantom Pain being the next Metal Gear Solid game. Clues included the white petal symbolizing the boss, the child resembling a young Psycho Mantis, a flaming specter resembling Vulcan who similarly died in flames, a figure that resembles Raiden, graphics that vastly resembled the already revealed Ground Zeroes, and most important of all, the main character's missing right eye and his familiar mullet. But most suspicious of all was the fact that this game was supposedly being developed by a studio that nobody has ever heard of, Moby Dick Studio. The CEO of the company was a man named Joachim Mogren. It didn't take long for fans to figure out that the CEO's first name, Joachim, was an anagram for Kojima. But perhaps the most startling discovery was the fact that with the right font and text size, the words Metal Gear Solid 5 perfectly fit within the gaps on the Phantom Pain's logo. After this discovery, fans of the franchise were convinced that the Phantom Pain was indeed the next Metal Gear Solid game. And thus 2013 arrived, and gamers waited eagerly to hear some kind of announcement from Kojima, finally admitting his involvement with this Phantom Pain project. They wouldn't have to wait long, as it was announced in February that Kojima would be giving a presentation at GDC 2013, which would take place sometime between March 25th to March 29th. But shortly before the event, something unprecedented happened. David Hayter, the iconic voice of Snake, tweeted the following: "Informal poll. How would you react if I didn't play Snake in the next Metal Gear?" While some assumed this was nothing more than an informal poll, most began to fear that David Hayter would not be voicing Snake in the upcoming game. Fans of the franchise expressed outrage over such prospect. Then, days before GDC, game trailers released an exclusive interview with Moby Dick Studio CEO Joachim Mogren, whose appearance was concealed by bandages similarly to the mysterious character shown in the Phantom Pain trailer. During the interview, he stated with confidence that a new trailer of the Phantom Pain would be shown at GDC 2013 and that it would answer all of our questions. He then showed some new artwork and screenshots, only to supposedly reveal on accident that the game was running on the Fox engine. With many questions left unanswered, gamers had no choice but to look forward to GDC 2013. And thus, the Game Developers Conference finally graced the world, and with it, so did Hideo Kojima, as he took the stage with a mask that vastly resembled Joachim Mogren's and that of the mysterious bandaged man. After a short introduction, Kojima finally showed off the trailer that would answer all questions. It revealed a number of key facts regarding the story, such as the fact that after Ground Zeroes, Snake would fall into a 9-year coma that would serve as the bridge between Ground Zeroes and the Phantom Pain. Fans also learned that by the end of Ground Zeroes, Mother Base would be destroyed, that this mysterious, disfigured individual somehow caused this, and that 9 years later, Big Boss would wake up to find himself in the assaulted hospital shown off during the Phantom Pain's VGA trailer. Fans also noted that the hospital scene likely takes place in Cyprus based on the map on the wall and the UK flag, which is there because parts of Cyprus are actually UK territory. The most popular assumption is that Snake resides in this part of UK territory, Cyprus, since this portion resembles the whale tail from Moby Dick Studios' logo. Fans of the franchise also got a clear look at familiar characters, such as who many are assuming to be a young Psycho Mantis and a middle-aged Ocelot. But most important of all, it was finally confirmed, just as fans had predicted, that the Phantom Pain was indeed the next canonical Metal Gear Solid game. After the trailer was presented, Kojima himself confirmed that Metal Gear Solid 5 was comprised of both Ground Zeroes and the Phantom Pain, with Ground Zeroes serving as the prologue portion. And like Ground Zeroes, Kojima confirmed that the Phantom Pain would be open world. He then proceeded by showing off a gameplay demo of the introduction portion of the Phantom Pain. Kojima stated that this hospital portion serves to introduce players to the new controls and mechanics before giving players free reign over the vast open world. The demo didn't show off too much that the trailer hasn't, but it did reveal two key facts. One, the bandaged character that has been so heavily advertised is named Ishmael, and two, it was just about confirmed that David Hayter would not be reprising his role as Snake after an unfamiliar voice spoke in place of David Hayter.
What the hell is going on? Well, the good news is, you're in the land of the living. Bad news? The world wants you dead.
After the demo concluded, the rest of the presentation dealt with the Fox engine, revealing no new information about the game. But soon after GDC 2013, Game Trailers interviewed Hideo Kojima to answer some questions. The interview covers everything from the game's development, story, to gameplay. On the development front, one of the first topics revolved around whether the two parts would be sold separately or together. Kojima declined to comment, but he did reiterate that the two parts together make up Metal Gear Solid 5. He also stated that Ground Zeroes isn't just a prologue in terms of story, but also gameplay, which is why Ground Zeroes will be a more controlled and compact experience than Phantom Pain. The idea is that playing a scaled-down version of some of Metal Gear Solid 5's new features through Ground Zeroes will allow players to more easily transition into the vast, overwhelming game that is the Phantom Pain. Finally, on development, Hideo Kojima talked about David Hayter, confirming that he will not be reprising his role as Snake. He stated that part of the reason has to do with the fact that Metal Gear Solid 5 is a new kind of Metal Gear, as represented by the use of Roman numerals instead of Arabic numerals, and that he wanted this change to be represented through Snake's voice actor as well. On the story front, Kojima talked about Diamond Dogs, which he confirmed to be Snake's new unit after he loses Mother Base during the events of Ground Zeroes. He stated that the name does have to do with blood diamonds, which was a popular assumption amongst fans, and that the word dog signifies mercenaries and dogs of war who work for money and do dirty things to achieve their goals. Kojima also commented on Snake's horn, which appeared briefly at the end of the GDC trailer. He stated that the horn was debris and bone embedded into a skull, although how this happened was not detailed. Finally, on story, Kojima talked about the balance between realism and supernatural, which he addressed due to the fantastical elements shown during the Phantom Pain trailer. Kojima assured that Metal Gear Solid 5 will be more grounded to realism, approximating a ratio of 80% realistic and 20% fantastical or supernatural. Kojima also had some things to say about gameplay, talking about his overall vision. He stated that his goal is to create a realistic stealth simulation by implementing features like an open world and a day and night cycle. Players can now choose when to execute a mission, which is an important decision, since infiltrating an area during the daytime is different from infiltrating at night due to differences in visibility, patrol patterns, etc. Players can also choose how to infiltrate areas rather than have a pre-rendered cutscene do most of the work for them. The areas themselves will also be open, meaning players can choose how to accomplish their missions and won't have to travel on linear paths. But other than his overall vision, Kojima couldn't talk much else about gameplay, but he did discuss Snake's new prosthetic arm, stating that the arm would have certain functionalities that will aid players during gameplay, although he emphasized that it won't go all bionic commando or anything crazy like that. The functionalities will be small, but helpful. Finally, when asked about playable characters, Kojima did state briefly that players will be playing as one character, meaning the character you'll be controlling is Naked Snake, aka Big Boss.
Playing the entire game as one character?
Yes, you'll be playing as one character. No riding. You can play Revengeance for that.
What we see...
And that about concludes all the information revealed during the interview. Kojima was asked a number of other questions, like what the game's theme is or if the game will be available for next-generation consoles, but he refused to comment on some of these topics until a later date. Reactions to the onslaught of new information from GDC were mostly positive, but understandably, fans were upset about David Hayter not being asked to reprise his role. But hope would soon come in the form of a tweet on April 1st, through which David detailed his untimely and sudden departure from the role, and he also thanked the fans for all their support. What caught most people's attention was the fact that the tweet was posted on April Fool's Day, leaving people wondering if all of this was yet another ruse by Kojima. When asked about this on later dates by a number of sources, David Hayter replied that he was not part of any scheme, and that as far as he knows, he is currently not involved in Metal Gear Solid 5. And yet, David Hayter continued to tweet ambiguous posts that seemed to indicate otherwise, giving fans hope that Kojima would surprise the world with the announcement that David Hayter would somehow be involved in the upcoming game. Then, days before E3, Konami streamed their pre-E3 presentation, revealing that Snake's new voice actor is none other than Kiefer Sutherland. Kojima's reason for choosing a more seasoned actor was because of the reliance on motion capture. This technology would allow Snake to be expressed through a more subdued performance, which was important to match the game's darker tone. He wanted Snake to express himself not just through words, but also through tone of voice and facial movements that only veteran actors could achieve. Kojima believed that only a seasoned actor like Kiefer Sutherland would be able to become both the voice of Snake and the face of Snake. Despite his reasons, fans were split on Kojima's decision. While many argued that Kiefer Sutherland would unquestionably deliver better performance, others argued that it would be strange not to hear such an iconic voice from a game titled Metal Gear Solid. More news would arrive a few days later when E3 2013 finally graced the world, during which Kojima revealed a new trailer for Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain, showing just how much darker the game's tone would be. It also confirmed the return of Robin Atkin Downes as Kaz, it confirmed Paz, Huey, and Ocelot as returning characters, and it also introduced a plethora of new characters such as Quiet, a mute sniper whose mascara has been noted by many to fade away, similarly to the Yen's liver spots, Skullface, the antagonist shown during Ground Zeroes, and Code Talker, who many correctly assumed to be a World War II Navajo code talker. The most notable character, however, was Eli, who shares a striking resemblance to a young Liquid Snake. A number of other clues were spotted, such as the jackal teeth around his neck, and his subtitle, A Youth Who Curses His Fate, which likely derives from Liquid Snake being led to believe since youth that he was created to express Big Boss's recessive genes, leading him to curse his fate. But perhaps the biggest clue is his name, Eli, which references the story of the sons of Jesse, David, Eliab, and 6 other brothers. In the story, Eliab, or Eli, was the eldest and superior son, while David was the youngest and most inferior. The same way that Liquid was in reality created to express Big Boss's superior genes, while David, or Solid Snake, was created to express his recessive genes. But in the story, it was David who was anointed by God to become king, leading Eliab to develop an inferiority complex and jealousy towards David, similar to how Liquid was jealous of Solid, or David's supposed superiority. Another striking resemblance between the two stories is that the same way David and Eliab were 2 of 8 sons, Solid and Liquid Snake were originally part of an octuplet, with the other 6 fetuses having been aborted during the Les Enfants Terribles project to encourage strong fetal growth for the remaining 2. With all these connections, there is little doubt in the minds of fans that Eli is indeed Liquid Snake. Finally, for characters, there are a few of them that remained unnamed, such as these 4 cyborg-like soldiers, the Volgan-like Spectre, and the familiar Child. These unknown entities are simply given the title, Those Who Don't Exist. The trailer also confirmed a number of new story elements, such as the fact that during Ground Zeroes, after Chico's rescue and before the destruction of Mother Base, Snake would rescue Paz from Camp Omega and would be forced to surgically remove a bomb planted inside her body. Also confirmed is that sometime during Snake's coma, Kaz Miller would be captured in Afghanistan after his attempt to fight back against Cypher, and his rescue was one of Punish Snake's first missions. During his captivity, Kaz would lose his right arm and left leg, and his lost limbs and his fallen comrades would change him into a man who only seeks vengeance and retribution. Shortly after Kaz's rescue, Snake would establish Diamond Dogs, which would become involved in a number of shady activity, such as the torture of characters like Quiet and Snake's old friend Huey Emmerich. Finally, for story, the game reveals that child soldiers and blood diamonds in Africa will play significant roles in this game. Africa in particular is highlighted at the end of the trailer.
He mentioned something interesting. Cypher is pursuing new research. He claims that what they're doing in Africa is the missing piece. A weapon to surpass Metal Gear.
This emphasis on Africa further supports the theories of many fans that Metal Gear Solid 5's story will bridge the gap between Peace Walker and Metal Gear 1, since the latter takes place in South Africa, where Big Boss's nation for soldiers, Outer Heaven, would be established. The trailer also reveals new gameplay features. Most notable of all is the vast open world and the degree of freedom that players are offered. Within the open world, players can choose from various modes of transportation, like horseback riding, and various types of vehicles. They can take advantage of the game's dynamic weather. They can improvise many ways to sneak into a desired location, and they can even choose when to infiltrate an area, as noted by this particular scene showing the passage of time, which as it turns out is actual in-game footage of the game's time fast-forward feature. The trailer also shows off some of the game's stealth gameplay and Snake's fluid animations and transitions through various stances. Perhaps the most interesting new gameplay feature is Snake's ability to jump like a normal human being, rather than having to barrel roll. In fact, the barrel roll itself seems to have been completely removed in favor of this new diving maneuver. The trailer also shows a brief glimpse of the game's enhanced CQC, particularly the ability to steal weapons off of enemies and use them without restrictions. Finally, for gameplay, the trailer seems to suggest that at some point, Snake will be taking advantage of what looks like a mini version of a Metal Gear model. One last bit of information that was revealed through the trailer was the fact that Metal Gear Solid 5 would indeed make its way to next-generation consoles, which was good to know. And thus, after unveiling a jam-packed trailer, E3 2013 came to an end. From then on, small bits of dispersed information would be revealed until Tokyo Game Show. For example, it was revealed that Stephanie Justin would be doing the motion and facial capture for Quiet, that Jay Tavare, a Navajo actor, would be playing the role of Code Talker, and that Troy Baker would be playing the middle-aged Ocelot. Little bits of story details were also revealed, such as the fact that Quiet would act as the main heroine of the game, perhaps suggesting that Big Boss and Kaz would play the roles of anti-heroes. It was also revealed that the main themes of the game are race and revenge, and that the title The Phantom Pain not only signifies the pain that one feels after losing limbs, but also the lingering pain after losing comrades. Furthermore, Metal Gear Solid 5's story was stated to be much less linear. For example, there may be missions in which players can choose whether a certain character lives or dies, and missions themselves don't always have to be tackled in a specific order. Finally, for story, Kojima stated that despite the darker and more serious tone of the game, the franchise's iconic humor, Easter eggs, and stupid jokes, as he puts it, will make a return. Some gameplay information was also revealed before Tokyo Game Show. For example, in an episode of the Kojima Productions Alert podcast, it was revealed that it takes 6 real-time hours for 24 hours to pass in Metal Gear Solid 5's day and night cycle. Kojima also eased some concerns through Twitter, one being that very little gadgets have been shown thus far, but Kojima assured that players can look forward to using tons of familiar and new gadgets. Another popular concern was whether inchworming from Metal Gear Solid 4 would make a return, to which he replied no. It was also revealed through an interview that Kojima is thinking about ways to integrate devices like tablets and smartphones, with one idea being allowing user-generated missions to be created and shared through these devices. Fans would be teased with small bits of information like these until Tokyo Game Show and the days leading up to it. In the days leading up to it, Kojima would show off a closed-doors demo during the opening of Kojima Productions LA, the studio that would be in charge of the next Metal Gear Online. While journalists described to the best of their ability what they saw, it wouldn't be until Tokyo Game Show that 2 separate demos would be shown to the public, confirming many of the new gameplay features that were described. One demo took place at night with a stealth approach, while the other took place during the day with an action approach. Both demos displayed a number of new gameplay features, such as the ability to tag targets and keep track of their locations, the ability to see an X-ray-like vision for tagged targets, the lens flare indicators that warn players of nearby patrol, the reflex mode feature which grants players a chance to avoid detection, regenerating health, threat rings, realistic bullet drop and effective weapon range, live codec feeds and intel gathering.
難民キャンプだ。キューバやハイチの難民を収容しているらしい。
The iDroid device, the ability to place custom waypoints, chopper landing zones and extraction via chopper, a practically non-existent HUD, a new inventory wheel, a new and enhanced CQC system with returning features, a new interrogation system, an overall faster and more fluidly moving Snake, and much more. Furthermore, as the demos were being played, Kojima himself answered a number of questions, revealing information like the fact that Metal Gear Solid 5 will feature main missions and side ops, and that these missions will offer ranks and challenges players can fulfill by replaying these missions through the mission selection menu. He also revealed that in Ground Zeroes, players can only call one chopper per mission, and can only recruit soldiers by physically carrying them to the chopper. In the Phantom Pain, on the other hand, players will have access to as many customizable choppers as players can afford. They'll have access to the Fulton recovery system to recruit bulks of soldiers at a time, and they'll be given free reign to manage Snake's new base, Diamond Dogs, allowing them to manage their army, purchase and develop new weapons and items, etc. In other words, Ground Zeroes will essentially feature an introductory tutorial version of base management, while the Phantom Pain will feature the real thing. Kojima also revealed that the story explanation for Ground Zeroes' restrictions is related to the UN's nuclear inspection that Kaz and Snake briefly touched upon during the intro cutscene.
The upcoming inspection of Mother Base has to be connected somehow. The timing's too perfect.
The UN's nuclear inspection.
Apart from these, not much else was revealed by Kojima that the demos didn't show. Fan reactions were mixed after Kojima's presentations. Their biggest concern was that features like regenerating health, the tagging system, and reflex mode seemed to make the game too easy, but Kojima emphasized in later interviews that these new features would not make the game easy but rather balance it. He stressed that the game's open-world nature, along with unpredictable enemy placement and advanced AI, make it much harder to remain undetected, and once the base is alerted, the consequences are brutal since the entire open world will make pursuit. The only reasons the demos might have looked easy is because 1. It was being played on an untested low difficulty, and 2. Because the player was a level designer who was quite good at the game. But to appease hardcore gamers, it would later be revealed through a Kojima Productions Alert podcast that features like the tagging system and reflex mode can be turned off, and that players will be rewarded for completing missions in this manner. Furthermore, Ground Zeroes' mission selection menu will allow players to choose between normal and hard difficulty, with the latter enhancing enemy AI to see longer distances and to work as a team in more intricate ways. And thus, Tokyo Game Show concluded, and from then on, steady information would release until the end of the year. For example, shortly after the event, an English version of the Ground Zeroes trailer was released, confirming a number of returning voice actors such as Tara Strong as Paz, Anthony Del Rio as Chico, and Christopher Randolph as Huey, along with introducing James Horan as the voice of Skullface. Information would also release from a number of post-Tokyo Game Show interviews, such as the fact that the Phantom Pain is around 300 times larger than Ground Zeroes in terms of combined physical map sizes, since the former features a number of locations around the world, such as Afghanistan, along with various parts of Eastern Europe and Africa, while the latter only features one location, Camp Omega, located in a United States naval prison facility on the southernmost tip of Cuba. There are also still locations for the Phantom Pain that have not yet been revealed, but Kojima did confirm that Metal Gear Solid 5 would not feature any metropolitan areas. The game will mostly be comprised of remote locations like deserts, jungles, remote facilities, and secret locations, away from civilians. Interviews also revealed that for the hardcore players, Kojima assured that both Ground Zeroes and the Phantom Pain would feature multiple side ops that are significantly more difficult than the main missions. He also revealed that completing any kind of mission will have some kind of direct effect on Snake's base. Unfortunately, specific details weren't given, but the assumption is that after players tackle a mission and as time passes, they will obtain new resources, develop new weapons and gadgets, and physically see their base grow in a similar fashion to Peace Walker. Speaking of missions, Kojima also confirmed that unlike in past games, which forced players to tackle objectives one by one in a specific order, Metal Gear Solid 5 grants players access to multiple main and side missions at a time, which can be tackled in any order. This new format also had an effect on the game's narrative. He compared Metal Gear Solid 5's narrative to that of a TV show, in which each individual episode, or mission in this case, features its own separate story, but when they all come together, form an overarching story. What order players decide to tackle these missions or episodes is up to them, but a core story will form as players piece together the individual missions and stories together. Speaking of tackling missions, not only will Metal Gear Solid 5 feature a mission selection menu, but it was also confirmed through an interview that Metal Gear Solid 5 would feature a loadout system similar to Peace Walkers, meaning players will have to manage their inventory and decide what to take before tackling a mission. These post-Tokyo Game Show interviews also yielded some new story information. For example, Kojima explained the meaning behind the title Ground Zeroes, which signifies how, story-wise, it's the ground zero for many characters. By the end of Ground Zeroes, a chain of events will unfold that will dramatically change the lives, beliefs, ideals, and motivations of many key characters, including Snake. Kojima also described Ground Zeroes as the pre-title sequence of a movie, those first few minutes that, through dramatic events, set up the story for the rest of the movie. One final interesting bit of information came about from an episode of the Hide Radio podcast, during which Kojima stated that Snake can commence an operation with a buddy, who can be equipped with most of the same weapons and gadgets as Snake. He didn't go into much detail, so it's hard to say whether this buddy will be AI only or if a second player can take control. Also within the podcast, Kojima actually showed an unreleased concept art to the hosts showing off Snake with a companion, but unfortunately the podcast was only streamed with audio. Despite the plethora of information that came about after Tokyo Game Show, one question remained unanswered. Will Ground Zeroes and the Phantom Pain be sold separately? This question would finally be answered on November, when Konami released a fact sheet for Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes, confirming that it would indeed be released as a separate package sometime in spring of 2014. The fact sheet also confirmed that the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 versions would be priced at $29.99 for the retail version and $19.99 for the digital version, while the Xbox One and PlayStation 4 versions would be made available only digitally for $29.99, although Konami would eventually announce in December that the next-gen versions would get a retail release priced at $39.99. Then, days after the fact sheet was made public, Konami announced exclusive content for both PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. For PlayStation 4, they announced the Deja Vu mission, which allows players to play as Classic Snake to tackle unique missions in a Shadow Moses-esque Camp Omega. For Xbox One, they announced the Jamais Vu mission, which allows players to play as Raiden in an action-packed mission involving the elimination of Snatchers in Camp Omega. Along with the Xbox One exclusive announcement, an exact release date for Ground Zeroes was finally confirmed to be March 18, 2014. Alongside these various press releases, Konami also updated Ground Zeroes' website with a new synopsis, giving more context to the story. It confirms that Ground Zeroes begins in 1975, and by this time, Snake's army without a nation has established a sizable reputation, funding, and military might. Eventually, rumors began to spread that MSF had attained nuclear weapons capability, which is what instigated the UN nuclear inspection. At around the same time, Snake and crew learned that Paz had survived her encounter with Snake and was being questioned in Camp Omega, which could compromise some classified details that Paz obtained when she infiltrated MSF. To further worsen matters, Chico, who had developed feelings for Paz, went after her, only to be captured himself. Snake was left with no choice but to rescue both Paz and Chico while Mother Base prepared for the nuclear inspection. Little did he know that this decision would set in motion a series of tragic events that would change his fate forever. Alongside this information, a few other smaller details released around the same time, such as the fact that Ground Zeroes save files will transfer over to the Phantom Pain, granting bonuses for the latter depending on what players achieved in the former. Kojima also showed off the latest version of Ground Zeroes' main menu, revealing along the way that players can import music into Snake's Sony cassette player. Finally, for the latest bit of information, it was confirmed in the most recent episode of KP Alert podcast that first-person view would make a return. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the last bit of information that came about from 2013. That concludes Metal Gear Solid 5's 2013 roundup, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in. Hey, you actually stuck around for the whole thing. God bless ya. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like and also share it with your friends to help them wrap their brains around the craziness that has been Metal Gear Solid 5. And to be further updated on Metal Gear Solid 5, be sure to join the NASIAN and subscribe to Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Thank you very much, and Young out!